What's up, everybody? It is Jake back with the MF Film Room. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA College Football, hit that red subscribe button right now. Do it. I'm telling you, we're short on subs. We're going to get this thing going. If you want to have any news, any updates, I'm going to make sure we handle them with this channel. Also follow me on X/Twitter. Over there, I discuss mostly college football and EA College Football. And again, I have another channel as well, Master Football with Jake Posey, that does exclusively college football. But you're here for that EA College Football content. Remember, please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, we're continuing our series on our EA College Football Features review. Nobody's got that content. I'm making that content. What we're going to go over today, we started a couple of different videos. We have it on Monday. We had ourselves some recruiting. Wednesday, we had going over NIL. And now Friday, we're going to go over the transfer portal, one of the most hottest topics in all of college football today. A lot of people say, oh, it's modern free agency. We're, miniature NFLizing the game, for lack of a better term. And it's true to some degree. Now, I want to make sure we go over how it's going to happen in the game here. We're going to make sure we're going a couple different sections. So make sure you stay till the end of the video. Let me know your thoughts about all this. And again, also remember, please like, share, subscribe. Without further ado, here is that content. So today we are going to go over the transfer portal. The transfer portal is not something that was in previous games. There was a transfer process. We are going to go over that. Like I said in most of these videos, we talk about the history in the game, and then the history according to the NCAA in the real world. We're also going to talk about the factors to consider, make sure we can break it up into specific items. And then we're also going to talk about my recommendations for those. First thing we need to do is go over, what is the transfer portal? Well, this article does a really, really good job of breaking down what it is, what it isn't. Basically, what it is the transfer portal is a portal. It's literally a system. It's literally a tool. So before, and again, we're going to get into that in a second here, before it was a much more complex process, the transfer portal has allowed it to be much quicker. Let's get into that. The transfer portal is a function of Division I's new notification of transfer model. Division I went to a notification of transfer model for the 2018-2019 academic year. The student athlete is empowered by the change to the bylaw. Once student athletes ask that a compliance administrator place their name in the portal, the school has 2 business days to submit the information. It is up to the individual school to develop policies regarding portal requests. The downside for student athletes is that their current school can reduce or stop giving them aid at the end of the term in which their request was made to the transfer portal. That's been a serious issue here. A lot of people think the transfer portal means I'm on scholarship during the fall season. I'm going to request to go into the transfer portal January or February. They go into the transfer portal and then they continue to stay on scholarship through that time period. That's not the case. The school, if depending upon their admissions requirements, can adjust from there. They can basically say, sorry, dude, sucks to suck. You're out of here. You got to go. A big aspect here, it says previously in D1, when student athletes wanted to transfer, they had to ask their coach for permission to contact other schools. If the coach denied the request, student athletes could make their case to the athletics director. That was a big point of contention, where a lot of times what would happen is that coaches would be like, yeah, dude, you can transfer. You can't transfer to this school, and this school. So they wouldn't release them to those other schools. And it was the reason why behind, I don't really understand the reason why behind that. It was basically just kind of what the rules were. Again, as you can see with most rules with the NCAA, most of the time the NCAA compliance officers are like, oh, I don't know, that's what it says. Nobody really can explain why. I wanted to make sure I brought up this section of the article. It was really, really important to understand kind of how it works, also to factor in the percentages of what they kind of look like. You see here it says D1 men's transfer waivers for the 2018-2019 season. There are 5,500 plus athletes in D1 men's basketball. There were 704 transfers. 324 of those transferred to another D1 program. 111 of those were graduate transfers. 79 of those were submitted for the 213 remaining undergraduate transfers, and 44 of those waivers were approved. So it's not so much that you just the ability to go anywhere. You have to have a waiver and the ability to kind of submit yourself to the portal. You can enter the portal. Whether or not your portal submission is going to be approved is a different story. It says right here, common criteria for receiving a waiver, no participation opportunity at the previous school, you're not going to play, assertion of egregious behavior, the coach was ridiculous, assertion of student athlete injury or illness, you're injured, you need to leave, assertion of family member injury or illness, assertion of financial hardship, transition of a male student athlete due to a pregnancy or birth of a child, the assertion of death of an immediate family member, and assertions involving diagnosed education impacting disabilities. And again, I don't want to be a jerk here or mean, but
you and I both know that there's a lot of gray area in between here for a lot of people to be like, yeah, that's the reason why. Yeah, I've got a diagnosed education impacting disability, and I need to transfer to USC. So you know that happens a lot. I wanted to make sure I talked about the bottom of this article because it was really important. It says, of the 10,000 D1 student athletes entered in the portal, 25% were football players. So 10,000, 2,500 were football players. About 50% of the D1 football players in the portal were walk-ons who received no athletic financial aid and likely were seeking scholarship offers from other schools. So of that, 2,500 were football players, 1,250 were on scholarship, 1,250 were not on scholarship. And the reason why was they were probably seeking those 1,250 that weren't, wanted to be on. And again, we've gone over the history of outside of the college football game. We're going to go over the history inside the game here in a second. We're also going to go over the factors to consider and then my recommendations. So for EA college football transfer history, I only had 2014 up here. So 2014 had a couple different things. So in the off season, you had the ability to go through these things called steps. First step, second step, third step, fourth step, and so on. So one of the first steps, it says right here, at the end of the season, players could voluntarily elect to leave their school during the players leaving step. It was one of the first steps up there. It was coaches carousel and then players leaving. A player could go pro early or transfer to a different school during the players leaving step. So you see over here, this person's going for graduation. This person's going to be a second round pick. You could also have somebody wants to go, they're staying because they're homesick, they're leaving because of playing time. A couple different things right there as to why they were leaving or whether or not that you could convince them to stay. A transferring player typically gave one or two reasons why they wanted to leave: proximity to home, they were homesick, or playing time. You weren't playing them there, they wanted to play elsewhere. Teams could offer promises during the step to entice players to stay from either pro, draft, or to transfer. So again, let's just say if somebody wanted to play somewhere else, they wanted more playing time, you could say, we'll give you 3 games, 6 games, 9 games, we'll give you 150 carries, we'll give you 100 catches, we'll do whatever it takes to keep you here for those games. You could guarantee that to the player. They could choose to do so or not, whether or not they trusted your ability to give promises. So after players leaving, it was transfer requests. So players leaving step was step 1, followed by transfer requests step, where players could elect at their discretion to come to a different school. Again, it was at their discretion. It was only one school. And the schools could deny or accept the requests during this step. So you see this picture down here. We've got Cardale Jones, who was electing to come. You could check or uncheck this box if you chose to do so. You know what their year is, what their ability is, and so on. And remember, within this, it was the old school transfer rules, where if you transferred somewhere, you had to sit out 1 year. This game did the same thing. If somebody transferred to you, so as an example, all of these players right here, this little green circle would be over their face for that first year, and then from there, they would be able to play, but they would have to sit out that 1 year. So breaking down the factors to consider, there's a couple different things in here. So there's the new transfer portal method, as opposed to the previous method of transferring. Previous method of transferring, players left. In real life, they had a request from a coach to leave, and when transferring to a new school, they had to wait 1 year before they were eligible. New transfer method allows players to enter transfer portal at any time of the year. You can enter at any time, but your eligibility was still to be determined due to several factors that had to be reviewed. You couldn't say, yeah, well, it's week 4, and we're going to go ahead and transfer to USC, and I want to play right away. That's not how it works. You still have to be, your eligibility for that season is still up for debate. Transfer portal reasons for leaving. So again, players leave schools for several more reasons aside from proximity to home and playing time. Players like Jordan Addison left due to combination of losing his quarterback, Kenny Pickett, wanting to play at a bigger program, USC, and possibly more NIL money. And again, don't put that on me. Jordan Addison, I'm not sure if that's the reason why you left or not. That's a little bit of speculation there. Just want to preface that. And then also, smaller conference players may also want to play in larger conferences, as well as a way of improving their draft stock or to play a position they would rather play. Again, obscure prospect Arkansas D lineman John Ridgeway, he played at the FCS level at offensive tackle, transferred to Arkansas and played defensive lineman. Went up not only a huge step in competition, but took a switch from offensive line to defensive line and ultimately went in the NFL draft. And then another set of factors to consider here was current NCAA rules allow for 85 scholarships plus 20 non-scholarship players. Like I said before, of the 2,500 NCAA football players who entered the portal, those were the D1 players. Roughly 50% of these, 1,250, are non-scholarship players who want to receive scholarships. It didn't differentiate between how many were FBS versus FCS. I don't know that. It's just a guess there because D1 includes FBS and FCS. And then players must still provide a reason for leaving in the current system. In the game, they'll have reasons, but again, I know that those reasons are really, really simple to kind of work their way around. Again, that's just me. Just want to make sure I talked about all the factors to consider. All right, so my recommendations for the new EA college football game. Here is what I would say. The transfer portal would be created alongside recruiting, maybe even appear as the same players to pick from or a different group. So like right now, if you go to 247 Sports, you'll be able to see, the high school recruiting and then be able to see the transfer portal recruiting. They do the both at the same time. It would operate the same as recruiting with promises, points allocation, etc. I think it should be the same thing because in reality, it operates the same way. A player's decision to enter the portal depend on their happiness at their school, similar to morale in Madden. I don't mean morale the way that it functions, but morale as an idea. Morale is if somebody's morale is low, their abilities are low. If somebody's morale is high, their abilities are up. I think that what the new EA college football game should do is have happiness be relevant to how well the team is doing, how well whether or not they're playing or not, whether or not they get NIL or not, and so on and so forth. Their happiness rating should be dynamic based on several factors. It also needs to be independent. So one player who's a backup, who doesn't really care about playing, is through the roof because his team is winning. But if another team where a player who is getting a lot of stats, but they're losing, and some of their NIL promises or things like that weren't being met, their happiness would be down. So it says there that players can enter the portal during the season if happiness gets too low due to promises of NIL, playing time, redshirt versus non-redshirt, other reasons by not being met. If you get a 5-star quarterback, offer him a ton of NIL money and say he's going to play right away, and then you redshirt him, don't give him any NIL money, and he doesn't play, he would get he would get unhappy very, very quickly. And then, like I said before, happiness depends upon the player. So let's just say a player who plays a position they don't want to play, but is receiving other incentives that satisfy their happiness will stay. So let's just say somebody's like, I want to be an offensive tackle. You switch me over to fullback. I don't really like that, but the NIL is good. The conference prestige is good, and we're winning, and we're close to home. I'm cool with that. If all of those were negative, it'd be much more quicker with that person to enter that transfer portal and be able to be recruited later on. Also here as well, it says players can opt to leave, but then be convinced to stay if a coach's promises have not been kept in the past. This will be harder to get to work for the coach. So like I said before, if somebody's like, I'm about to leave here, but it's like, hey, I promise you, we're going to give you some NIL money. And then the next year you do, then your promise ability goes up from there. But if it can be overcome or somebody's got a stronger promise ability, it can be adjusted from there. Almost coach trust needs to be a new stat within this based on how much your promises are going to be kept or not. And then for the game, I think you just need to limit it to 85 scholarship players. On previous games, like on Xbox 360 capabilities, only had 70 scholarships. I think that it needs to be 85 just because that's what it is. But I also want to make sure we're clear about something. I feel differentiating between scholarship and non-scholarship players would create excessive amounts of data and detail that most of you players probably don't care about or wouldn't factor into many players who actually got on the field. There are some players, and we all know the memes out there, or the videos of the walk-on player who gets a scholarship and he goes, yeah, everything like that. It's really cool that happens, but how many of those guys actually get to the point of playing? There are some, don't get me wrong, there are some. Is it a significant factor that somebody needs to put into the game to the point to where there's a giant amount more of information they need to do on that? No, I don't think it really matters, but I do want 85 scholarship players. I actually wanted to add this section in here. So I wanted to make sure that we give preface for what I expect the game to do in the future. So I wanted to make sure that here, based on previous discussed numbers, maybe a little high due to no distinction between FBS and FCS players. And again, get in those comments, let me know what I need to consider there. Here's what I think we should each offseason should generally look like. Again, they said 10,000 total players entered the transfer portal. That's across all sports. 25% were football players, again, D1 football players. 50% of those were on scholarship, about 1,250. A 1,250 divided by 118, and again, that's just what the CLC agreed teams are right now, equals about 10.59 players leaving each school on average per year. Again, there's going to be 85 scholarships per team times 118 teams equals 10,030 players. So each team in EA CFB should average about 10 players enter the transfer portal each off season. If it reflected real life as close as possible, and again, those numbers can be fudged generally, but right now, if you see what it currently happens at NCAA Football 2014, could be 2, could be 5, might be, 3, but it's generally never more than like 4 or 5. But on average, across the board, because of the transfer portal and the ease of this happening, it looks like it's about 10 right now in the D1 ranks for football. So finally, what are you guys' recommendations? Get in those comments right now. Let me know what you would want to do with the transfer portal, what you wouldn't want to do. Let me know all that stuff. Again, also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm going to be getting more active on those things, but if you ever want to reach me on those, get in there and let me know. You can reach out to me directly on all that stuff. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I'd really appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow with more content. I am out.